diagrams as code. And we're also going to be creating a new CI/CD pipeline for generating these diagrams using Python code. And at the end of the day, what's going to happen is we're going to have a complete picture of our environment in PNG files that we can actually start using a wiki or documentation. Some of the dependencies that we would need for this is Python, the latest version of Python that you have. The first things first, I'm actually going to be showing you on a desktop, and then we'll be creating the CI/CD pipeline with it later on. So yeah, you would need Python. I already have Python in my system, but yeah, I would choose the 3.11 and just install that depending on your system, whether it's for Windows or Mac. Yeah, the other requirement is that we need diagrams. And this is the module that we need, and it's called diagrams. And we can see that we can install it using the pip install diagrams command. I already have this module, so let's actually look a bit further, see what else is required, because I know that there is another extra element that you need. So yeah, it requires Python 3.7 or higher, and you would need to install Graphviz. So yeah, let's just do that. Let's go to Graphviz, Windows download, and we would just download Graphviz over here. MSI would be fine. Only important thing is that after you download it, you have to make sure that you add it to the path. So these are all showing this thing. Any one of these, the exe for the Windows 10 should be fine for you guys, or depending on your operating system. So yeah, these are some of the prerequisites that you would need to actually get started with diagrams as code. I will show you a couple of examples as we move forward. So yeah, as you can see, I've just gotten into Visual Studio Code right now so that we can get started in this. So yeah, if you're not familiar with this, there are some great videos out there just to show the basics of VS Code. But let's see what we can do here. So I'm just going to create a new file. I'm just going to call this generate.py. And yes, now that's created that file for us. So let me show you what I mean by installing the diagrams module. So if I do this, pip3 install, yes, but because I'm using 3.11, it would be pip3 install diagrams, and it's already satisfied, so nothing really happens. But in your systems, I think you have to install that module right after installing Graphviz. So yeah, let's get started. So first of all, let's look at the documentation for Graphviz. So yeah, if you go back to the Python module, we can see that the guide is right here. We can just click on that, and it'll take us to the official documentation of diagrams, the Python module. We can see some of these code examples right here, from diagrams, import diagrams, and we create elements like that. So for us, we are mostly worried about Azure resources, so let's click on Azure, and these are the different sort of elements associated with us. So let's get create. And another thing that we do want to look into is what a node is, what a cluster is. So what a cluster does is it would actually group together some items, and it'll be like this. So this would be how it would be. So with cluster, we just pop in the name of the cluster, and then we pop in the related items over here. So yeah, let's create the most simple Azure diagram right now, and let's build on that as we move forward. So yeah, let's go back to Visual Studio Code. So let's import all of the networks and the subnets that we created last time. So yeah, let's just add that in. So again, let's do control space virtual networks, and after that we need subnets. If I can type, that'd be awesome. And subnets, and that's all we need for now. Let's go to the rest of the code in the documentation real quick over here. So let's go to that. As you can see to the in the documentation, to actually start the next available syntax that we have to use is with the with keyword. we'll just copy that line out there from there and paste it into Visual Studio Code. And let's just rename the diagrams over here. Let's call it present environment. And let's hit enter. And after that, in our previous video last time, we talked about generating the CI/CD pipeline to actually generate 2 subnets and a virtual network. So for that, let's do this. Let's create a resource group here. Is equal to resource groups. Let's name the resource group with a new name. It's DevNet01. So that's a resource group that we've created. The next thing that we do want to create is a subscription. So a subscription is equal to subscriptions, and what we are naming the subscription is, this is part of my Azure subscription, so I'm calling it the Azure Sponsor Pass, which is the name of my Azure subscription. And the next thing that we do want to create in this is our virtual network. So let's call this virtual network is equal to virtual networks, and let's name this VNet01. VNet1. We called it DevNet1 to be precise. DevNet1. And let's do a new line, and let's call it 10.0.0.0/16, and let's change this to a raw string so that we can have everything nice and easy. And the next thing that we do want to do is actually have 2 subnets. So for our subnets, I'm going to be doing this with cluster because I want to group my subnets with cluster. I'm calling this subnet 01. I'm just going to do the import right here. If I can type from diagrams import cluster, and that should fix up the IntelliSense error that we're getting there. And let's call this subnet 1 is equal to subnets. And let's just give it the IP address here, 10.0.0.0/24/24. Just making that a raw string, and what I'm going to do is I'm connecting our virtual network to our subnet 1. So this is my subnet 1. Let me go to the next cluster with cluster. It's calling subnet 2. Subnet 02, and let's create a new subnet here. Subnet 2 is equal to subnets of, let's give it the name of the IP 10.0.0.1/24, and it's a raw string, so that should be all good. Now let's connect our virtual network to the subnet 2, and that's connected. So right now we have a virtual network that is connected to a subnet. So this represents a connection or a link between them, and we've actually defined our resource group and subscription parameters up here. So let's do this. Apart from the subscription, let me link up all of my resource group. Yep, would connect it to my virtual network, and that's it. I don't want to connect my subscription right there, and you will see why. So I'm just going to write this Python code, run Python file in terminal, and this would have generated this file right here, and we can see, yes, it looks much better now. You can see that the resources have been all mentioned quite nicely. So guys, let's go to Azure DevOps right now to create the CI pipeline for this particular thing. And yep, Azure DevOps organization, navigate to my Azure DevOps organization, and it will be forcing me to sign in. I will choose the account that is already signed in. And default directory is what I want to have. And what this does is it actually gives me access to the default directory in Azure DevOps, and I've signed in, and I can see that this is the organization. If I click onto that, I can see the various sort of pipelines or projects that we've just created before. Let's go to the previous project, template var demo. Let's have a look at our repos. We can see that we have our variables right here, the ARM template that we've used to deploy, and the AD pipeline over here, which I don't think things have moved across that much, but yeah, so that's good. What I do want to do in this scenario is, first though, I would actually want to copy this particular repo into my local VS Code. So if I click on this tiny little thing over here, or clone in VS Code, and I'm just going to do always open that, just allow everything, and just so that I can select the location where this is going to go. So this is what's happened, as I've actually cloned my repository with all the information that I've needed. Yep, I'm just going to close everything over here. I can see my Azure pipelines over here. I'm just going to move them to my AD pipeline. Yes, move. So all of my pipelines are up here. So I've made a change to my repo. The next thing that I do want to do is commit that change. So I'll go to source control and just type moved pipelines to pipeline folder. And I'm just doing a commit here. So what this is going to do is commit those changes, and I'm just syncing them to the upstream repository. And it looks like it's almost completed. So let's wait a minute, and we can see that yes, I do want to periodically run git fetch so that my local repo is always up to date. So yep, so it's all good. Let's go back to our Explorer right here, and this is the ADO templates, variables, and let's create a new folder over here. Let's call this diagrams, just so that we have everything all good. And let's create the diagrams folder right here, because VS Code will not create an empty directory, it will not sync that. Let's create a new file here. Let's call this a readme file, diagram locate files, located here in this directory, just so that we understand this. Let's just commit this. Commit our change and just sync that change over to Azure DevOps now. Let's wait for a minute for that change to get synced, and as we can see that the change has synced, let's go to our Azure DevOps just to verify this. And if we refresh, you can see everything has been cleared off. We have a diagrams folder, AD pipeline, and yep, that's all good. So now let's get started on creating the CI pipeline and the scripts folder where we're going to be storing our Python script. Let me create a new folder. It's going to be called scripts. This is where all of our scripts are going to be located. And if you do remember, we've just created a Python script called generate.py. I'm just going to be copying and pasting that into this particular location. And as we can see, I think if that works, we can see that the scripts file, we do have our particular little code right here, and IntelliSense is working quite nicely. So yeah, let's just close that. We don't need very much apart from that. And let's close the Explorer as well, before which let's go to the AD pipelines and let's create a new pipeline. So in this case, we're going to be creating a new pipeline called CI document diagrams. I keep mixing that word up. Diagrams as code deploy. So yeah, I did not name it. Deploy.yam. So that has been changed accordingly. So now we have a new pipeline file. Alright guys, so let's do some pipeline development in Azure DevOps. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm not going to be having any trigger over here. So let me just call this trigger none. And the pool that I have for my entire run space is going to be a pool. It's going to be VM image. It's going to be Ubuntu latest. Because I like doing stuff in Linux, so that's what we're going to be doing. And now we're going to be calling our stages over here. So stages, the first stage is going to be called, it's going to be generating and running our documentation as code. So let's do generate docs as code. So after that, we're going to be calling the jobs. Yep, and the first job is going to be really simple. It's going to be the same thing. Generate docs as code. It's going to have a simple step, and just a step that we're going to be using over here is going to be a script. It's going to be a multi-line script, so we just reference that using the pipeline. So because we are in a Linux shell, it's going to be bash. So let me run this. Not a pool. pip3 install diagrams, just the module that we're going to be installing, and sudo apt install Graphviz, the component that we just have to add to our deployment. And after that, we're going to be running our code Python 3. And I am just pasting the location to this. So scripts, so if you go back to our thing, yes, inside the scripts, it's called generate.py. So let's do that. Let's correct the scripts. Yeah, let's go just merge generate.py. So this is our first thing that will actually give us the PNG file that we do. So it's a simple thing. We know that it all works. And the next thing that we are going to be doing is the task of publishing that. So let's go back to our script position and let's go to task. And the task is publish. Publish publish pipeline artifact 0 at 1. So this is the step that we need, and let's do this. Inputs, one of the inputs that we need is the target path, and we know that our path is thing. Oh yeah, I forgot to do something over here, and that is to actually specify the working directory and the name for this. So yeah, CME, let me call this name is going to be called prerequisites install doc generation. And after that, the working directory for this particular thing is going to be it's going to be the final location where we want our PNG to be stored. So let's go back here. Our PNGs are stored in diagrams. So let's do that. So for that, let's call a system .default working directory and slash diagrams, and that's where we want to have this. Let's diagrams, that's all correct. So that is our working directory for our inline script. The next thing is publishing that output. So the target path is going to be this. It's going to be system dot default working directory. Let me just copy this. I don't trust my typing, so let me just copy that up. Slash, it's going to be diagrams. And I am going to be copying the entire thing. So you know how in our path in our script we name it present environment. Let me copy that right here. Let me close up my let me close this up. Let me go back to my YAML file and let me give the complete present environment.png. So that's all good. So that is the target path. System default working directory, diagrams, environment, present diagrams, and that's all good. So the next part of that would be, what is the artifact going to be called? In my artifact, it's just going to be called diagram. Diagrammas, if I can't spell, and I'm going to be publish location, and this is going to be pipeline. So it's going to be in this present pipeline that we use, and so that looks all good, as we can see. So now we have finished one stage. Let's go back to our stages part of the YAML thing, and let's go to that, and let's call it the next stage. And the next stage is called merging results into pipeline. So this is the name of the stage, and this has some of it depends on the previous stage that we just have. So let me just copy that. So it depends on the previous stage, and there's also something we need to provide the condition and succeeded. If I do this, that means it will only run once the previous stage has succeeded. So over here, the same thing that we have, we're going to be having a couple of jobs, and one of the job right here is going to be download artifacts. Oh, we'll just sorry, it's going to be download artifacts and merge pipeline. So that is the job that we have right there, And what we are going to be doing is we're going to be running a task right now. So over here, it's going to be task. It's going to be called download. If I can really do any sort of typing, that'd be awesome. Before I do the jobs, it's called steps. I am jumping the gun here. So in my steps, the first thing I'm going to be doing is checking out myself. So what it does, it actually checks out the present pipeline that we have. So I checked out myself, and the next thing what I'm going to be doing is persisting credentials. So just so that my credentials will be all persisted through the pipeline. So that's all good. And the next thing that I do want to do is task. Now IntelliSense would work. That's awesome. So the task is download pipeline artifacts. Pipeline artifacts at 2. So that is the task that we currently have, and this task has a couple of inputs. So let's do inputs. It's going to be the build type is going to be current. That means it's going to take the current it's going to be taking the current value. And that's all we need. And the artifact name that we've previously called a diagram. So let's copy that over here, and it's going to be called diagrammas. So that's awesome. And we're going to be just copying this into the target path, which is, as you know, would be the same as diagrams. So that's done. We have now published, or what do you have, copied the pipelines that so now we have actually downloaded the pipeline artifact into the right directory. So now all that is left is actually running a script. So let's do this. It's going to be a script. It's going to be an inline script, and where I'm actually setting the script config. As you know, global user.email will be and I'm setting the next config, the username, just so that Git understands who is making these changes. And the next part is I am going to be checking out the main branch, and I'm going to be adding everything in my current directory. And after adding everything into my current directory, I am committing it. Added diagrams compiled by pipeline. Git push origin main, just so that I know where it's actually located. Main, if I can spell. And the last thing that I do want to know is just the display name. Display name is going to be git command line push. And as we can see, our pipeline looks all good right now. So that's all good. Let's save our file. Let's go to our source control. Let me do make changes to pipeline, commit, and I'm just going to be syncing my change over to my remote branch that's located in Azure DevOps. So yeah, now let's go back to Azure DevOps. Now once we go back to our Azure DevOps, we can see if you go into our repos, we can see the IED pipelines. We can see that the new YAML has everything that we need. Good. So just before we actually start deploying this pipeline, there is something that we have to do. So you know how in the bottom of our script that we added the git config, so we should be able to actually push this. Right now we do not have that permission to do so. So let's just go to the project settings in the bottom right corner. If you go all the way down to the repositories, and if you go over to security, this is where you can see the build service account right here. And we just needed to have contribute access to our repo so that it can actually start contributing. So let's go back to our pipelines. Let's do a new pipeline right here. It's in Azure repos git template var demo. I already have a pipeline file, so let me do this, and it shows up right here. Continue, run the pipeline. As you can see, we have two different groups over here. One group is to generate the docs and the other one is to manually merge the results. So let me see here. So that's gone through, that's going quite nicely. I'm just going to pause the video over here just to see after it has completed. As you can see, the entire pipeline has run successfully. Let's go check out our repo and diagrams, and we have it right here, our diagram that is there. So thanks guys, thanks for tuning in to this episode. So I'll see you guys next week.